Hey everyone! Today we're diving into how to talk about your daily routines, both in the present and when sharing about things you used to do. We'll kick things off with a conversation to set the scene, and then we'll break down some important grammar points, like reflexive verbs and the imperfect tense, to help you express these routines accurately. We'll also tackle some common pronunciation hurdles and mistakes that English speakers often make. Finally, a quick recap and some homework to wrap things up, so let's get rolling.
Normalmente me despierto a las 7. Normalmente me despierto a las 7.
¿Y tú qué desayunas por la mañana? ¿Y tú qué desayunas por la mañana?
Desayuno tostadas con mermelada. Desayuno tostadas con mermelada.
Let's break down that exchange. Maria used the reflexive verb
Despertarse.
to wake up. Notice that the pronoun
Mer.
comes before the verb. Reflexive verbs are actions you do to yourself, so it's super important to get the pronouns right. Me for I, T for you informal, C for he, she, you formal, nos for we, and the like. Always make sure the pronoun matches the subject. Now Carlos asks about breakfast habits.
Después del trabajo suelo ir al gimnasio. Después del trabajo suelo ir al gimnasio.
Yo también, pero los fines de semana duermo más. Yo también, pero los fines de semana duermo más.
Carlos nicely shows how to use suelo infinitive. Suelo from solar means usually or I tend to. Think of it like saying I have a habit of. It's a really handy way to express routines. Watch out though. English speakers often mispronounce suelo. Remember, the R is not rolled, just a quick tap. Then, Maria mentions
Dormir.
to sleep, using the reflexive pronoun.
Mer.
Again, you can see how we use reflexive verbs when we describe actions that involve ourselves.
Antes de dormir, leo un libro. Antes de dormir, leo un libro.
Cuando era niña, solía jugar con muñecas. Cuando era niña, solía jugar con muñecas.
Today, we'll be learning how to express future actions using the structure a infinitive. This is a very common way to talk about what you're going to do. For example, voy a estudiar means I am going to study. It's a simpler way to express future intent than using the future tense conjugations, especially for everyday plans.
Mañana voy a visitar a mis padres. Mañana voy a visitar a mis padres.
Excellent, Maria. Notice that voy follows the present tense conjugation of to go yo voy. The infinitive of the verb you intend to do comes after. Note that a infinitive is best for near future plans. For more distant or scheduled events, the future tense might be more appropriate. It's all about context.
La semana que viene voy a empezar un nuevo trabajo. La semana que viene voy a empezar un nuevo trabajo.
Perfect, Carlos. You correctly used to express a future plan. Remember, the key is the a construction, the infinitive. This is an extremely natural and common way to communicate what you plan to do in the near future. Good job incorporating this structure into a sentence.
Vas a venir a mi fiesta el sábado. Vas a venir a mi fiesta el sábado.
That's a great question, Maria. When asking a question with a, the structure remains the same vasa infinitive. Inversion occurs later, if needed, depending on the sentence complexity. Remember that the form of reflects the person you're addressing.
Sí, voy a venir, me encantaría. Sí, voy a venir, me encantaría.
Excellent, Carlos. Notice the addition of me and cantario, which translates to I would love to. Adding expressions like this elevates the response and adds enthusiasm. It's a great way to show you're genuinely pleased about an invitation. Using expressions like this is core to natural-sounding fluency.
Pero si llueve, no voy a salir. Pero si llueve, no voy a salir.
Today, we'll review the preterite tense. This tense is used to describe completed actions in the past, actions that had a definite beginning and end. It's distinct from the imperfect, which describes ongoing or habitual actions. Think of the preterite as the past simple in English and remember it frequently describes tasks in your everyday routine that aren't recurring now.
¿Qué hiciste diferente el fin de semana pasado? ¿Qué hiciste diferente el fin de semana pasado?
Excellent question, Maria. Notice the use of the preterite tense, deceased, to ask about a specific, completed action. The preterite has different endings for each pronoun yo, tu, ale, ella, usted, etc. and many irregular verbs. We will focus on regularity. Remember to memorize those verb conjugations as they are crucial for fluency.
El sábado me levanté muy tarde. El sábado me levanté muy tarde.
Fantastic, Andres. You correctly used the preterite tense with a reflexive verb, levante. When describing past actions with reflexive verbs, the same rules apply as with the present tense. You need the reflexive pronoun, for example, me, t, see, and to conjugate the verb in preterite. Pay attention to these details for accuracy in your speech.
¿Y qué comiste para la cena el domingo? ¿Y qué comiste para la cena el domingo?
Very good, Maria. You formed a question using the preterite. Notice how you placed the verb comiste before the subject and raise in the inquiry. This is standard question formation in Spanish. Essentially, you are reversing the standard sentence structure to pose the question correctly. Accurate word order proves your control.
Comí paella con mi familia. Comí paella con mi familia.
Today, we'll focus on adverbs of frequency starting with siempre, meaning always. It's placed before the main verb, indicating a routine or habit that happens without exception. For example,
Siempre.
Bebo café por la mañana translates to I always drink coffee in the morning. Pay attention to its placement to maintain correct grammatical structure and clarity in your descriptions.
Siempre haces ejercicio por la tarde. Siempre haces ejercicio por la tarde.
Excellent question, Andres. Notice how the adverb of frequency siempre modifies the verb haces. Remember that adverbs generally don't change form, regardless of the verb's conjugation. While siempre itself doesn't change, careful listening and pronunciation are still vital to ensure your message is conveyed accurately, especially when spoken quickly in conversation. Now let's experiment with a new location.
Normalmente como en un restaurante los fines de semana. Normalmente como en un restaurante los fines de semana.
That's a very common habit, Maria. Now, note the adverb normalmente, which is similar to often. Let's introduce another adverb, a veces, meaning sometimes. It also precedes the main verb. Practice incorporating both siempre and a veces into your descriptions to express varying degrees of frequency, adding more nuance to your storytelling and daily recounts. This enhances the detail and accuracy of your narratives.
A veces me levanto temprano para correr. A veces me levanto temprano para correr.
Today, we're focusing on how to chain reflexive verbs together. For example, instead of saying me levanto, me lavo, you can often combine them into me levanto y me lavo. This makes your Spanish sound more fluid and natural. Pay attention to the y and connecting the actions seamlessly. This is common in describing routines.
¿Te duchas antes o después de vestirte? ¿Te duchas antes o después de vestirte?
Excellent question, Maria. Note the use of antes o después, which is a very useful construction. When combining reflexive verbs sequentially, make sure the verb tenses remain consistent. You've demonstrated excellent grasp of phrasing a question naturally. Think of how you string together actions in your head when describing a sequence.
Primero me afeito y luego desayuno. Primero me afeito y luego desayuno.
Very good, Carlos. Now, let's introduce preferior to prefer. To express a preference related to routine actions, you can use phrases like prefiero ducharme antes de vestirme. This shows you aren't just describing actions, but stating your personal preference about them. This expands your vocabulary to express opinions concerning habits.
Yo prefiero desayunar antes de afeitarme. Yo prefiero desayunar antes de afeitarme.
Today, we're going to explore how to express that something you used to do, you no longer do. The phrase,
Ya no.
literally means no longer or anymore. It's a simple yet effective way to indicate a change in your routine. Pay attention to where it goes in relation to the verb, it precedes the verb directly.
Ya no me gusta ir al cine los domingos. Ya no me gusta ir al cine los domingos.
Excellent, Maria. Notice how
Ya no.
comes before the verb.
Gusta.
This is a very common construction. It needs to be positioned directly before the verb it modifies, emphasizing that the habit or preference has ceased. Try to avoid placing it elsewhere in the sentence.
Ya no me levanto temprano los fines de semana. Ya no me levanto temprano los fines de semana.
Very good, Carlos. Your sentence perfectly demonstrates the use of
Ya no.
you're contrasting a past habit, waking up early, with your current routine. This highlights the change. Now, let's practice using it to describe more specific activities.
Ya no preparo el almuerzo en casa los días de semana. Ya no preparo el almuerzo en casa los días de semana. Me despierto a las 7. Me despierto a las 7.
Trabajo de 9 a 5. Trabajo de 9 a 5.
Ceno a las 7. Ceno a las 7.
Perfect. Observe that with reflexive verbs, like levantars, the adverb of vices correctly precedes the entire reflexive construction. The key is to be mindful of where the adverb logically fits within the sentence structure. Pay close attention to these details and practice regularly to build your confidence. Consistent practice is essential for achieving fluency. Very good, Maria. You used a conditional clause. See Louvre if it rains, effectively with a. Observe how it provides a contingency plan. Practicing these conditional sentences strengthens your ability to express complexities in planning and decision-making. Keep up the good work. Great job. Maria used solia, which is a common way to say I used to. It's a fantastic tool for talking about past habits. The imperfect tense gives us insight into routines that were once a part of our lives. Just keep in mind how to conjugate those verbs correctly to improve your fluency. Okay, everyone, fantastic work today. We covered a lot of ground with describing daily routines and using the preterite and imperfect tenses. Let's do a quick recap with a few quiz questions to solidify what we've learned. All right, first question. What time does Maria wake up according to the dialogue? Is it
A las 6, a las 7, a las 8,
or?
a las 9,
The correct answer is
a las 7.
exclamation Maria wakes up at 7 o'clock. It's a classic early riser. Next up, what does Carlos usually do after work? Does he
Mira la televisión, va al gimnasio, lee un libro,
or
cocina,
it's
va al gimnasio.
exclamation Carlos is dedicated. He hits the gym after a long day's work. Final question. What did Maria used to do when she was a child? Did she
Jugar al fútbol, jugar con muñecas, estudiar mucho,
or?
cantar,
And the answer is
jugar con muñecas.
exclamation she loved playing with dolls, a typical childhood memory.
Intenta describir tu día usando las palabras nuevas. Practica en voz alta. Intenta describir tu día usando las palabras nuevas. Practica en voz alta.